Okay, hello everyone. I think we're live now. So there should be 20 people here. I think we'll give it a minute longer for more people to join. In the meantime, I can start by introducing myself. My name is Stan. I'm the managing director of Opora. Thank you for coming. We usually do webinars on the Ukrainian side. This is one of the first times that I've been in a webinar myself, because they're usually in Ukrainian. So I'm a little bit rusty. The last time we did one for sponsors was quite a while ago. But yeah, thank you very much for coming. Just to let you know, the meeting will be recorded. So you know, if you there shouldn't be anything showing from the non-presenter side very much. But just so that you're aware, it will be recorded. But then also that means we can share it with you later on when we're done. Cool. Shall we get started then? So I'm gonna say a little bit about who we are. For those who don't know, I know that some people joined via our sponsor Facebook group, but not everyone did. So I'm just gonna give a little bit of a backstory for Opora. We are a small charity. We were founded at the outbreak of the current invasion in late February, early March 22. So it's been a little while that we've been active as a charity. I'm not sure whether we can still, or I can still continue to call us a new young charity. We're still young. We're not entirely new anymore. But what we do primarily is we manage information and support channels for Ukrainians in the Ukrainian language, primarily on Telegram. Also a little bit on Instagram. We've got a website where we have guides to life in the UK, which are kind of compendiums of official resources on various topics, and then we've got blogs that expand on those topics further via the experience of our volunteers, of our staff, and others. Everyone besides me at Opora is Ukrainian, so it's from the kind of Ukrainian experience in the UK side. We also have a dedicated mental health channel, mental health project. We do webinars on various topics, mental health related as well. We recently also published a book for children on mental health and well-being. So we generally cover the informational side of things. We were initially, so the reason why we're also in the sponsor space a little bit is because we were one of the recognized providers for the Homes for Ukraine matching. We had a platform where people could match together. About 3,500 matches were made just through us, which is around 9,000 plus people in the UK just through us. But right now, what we do is mostly information provision, integration support via that, and through the contact that we have with our quite a large community. So we've got about 22,500 people on our main Telegram channel. Through that, we also know what barriers people are facing, what questions people are asking, just generally keeping a finger on the pulse. And we use that information to try to advocate and spread awareness around the barriers to policymakers and decision makers, which is mostly what my job is at Opora. Thank you. So just to give you some housekeeping for the webinar. The webinar will be about an hour and a half. We have a 2-hour time slot kind of slotted in as such, but we don't have to take it to 2 hours. It depends on how many questions people have. Please do write your questions in the chat. We'll try to answer as many of the questions that we can answer in the chat. So keep an eye on your question. If someone asks a question that you also wanted to ask, try to just put a little reaction onto it if you find out where that is, so that it's manageable. A little thumbs up is good. We will try to answer them in the chat, but then we'll also have a Q&A section at the end. So we'll answer some of the more complex ones ourselves live. Please don't share any sort of personal data in the chat. Kind of stay away from that as if you can. As I said, the recording will be available on the Opora Facebook group for sponsors, and then also our website. For technical support, also write in the chat and use reactions to express your thoughts or show support. Hopefully people are relatively comfortable / aware of how Microsoft Teams works. I know not everyone will have that level of comfort with it, but hopefully it makes sense. If it doesn't, write in the chat. Hopefully you can find the chat. Yeah, so that is me. Recognizable still. The beard is slightly. I'm really glad I'm not wearing the same thing. It's close, but not quite the same. So yeah, I'm Stan. I'm the managing director of Opora, and our other speaker will be Galina, who is one of our longest serving volunteers. Is sort of in the background of the vast majority of our informational side of things on Telegram. So she'll be leading through some of the rest of the webinar. I'll pick up at the end. Yeah, and here's the webinar agenda. So introduction to Homes for Ukraine, extension scheme, and all the other good stuff. What is an Evisa? Ukrainian permission extension scheme updates, what it is, when it's open, who can apply, how can you apply, all that stuff will be covered. Then something that will be quite interesting to everyone here, since it's the sponsor side of things. Thank you payment changes, and then once again focus on sponsors, how you can help your guests, your hopefully friends, acquaintances, if not directly guests anymore, how you can help people who are still on the Homes for Ukraine schemes in the UK that you're in touch with. Evisa's UPE, thank you payment changes once again. Then we'll cover some thoughts on what's next, both practically, and I'll try to cover a little bit more on the policy side of things in terms of implications as well. We'll not touch too much on that. If you do have specific questions around that, do write it in the chat. We'll try to stick to the more practical side of things, but I'll cover a little bit more of the consequences. And then, yeah, the questions and answers will be at the end. Just want to point out that, as with most of our webinars, this is for information only. It's not a legal consultation, so please don't take it as such. This is trying to run you through the publicly available information around the Ukraine schemes, the implications for them going forward, but it's not a legal consultation.
All right. Thank you very much, Stan. I'm gonna take over now with the most urgent topic, and this is Evisas. Right. So why is this the first topic? Because it's very much something that your guests need to take care of ASAP. So what is that? All of your guests probably already have this kind of BRP card. This was the card that they received when they arrived to the UK, either at the post office or via courier. So this card, it confirms, as of today, their immigration status in the UK. So if they need to prove their status at the border or when they board the flight, today they would show this BRP card. And they are not alone. There are around 4 million people, roughly, in the UK who have either a BRP or BRC, so resident card, or some other physical proof of status. And if you look very closely at this card, you will see that all of such cards, regardless of the length of person's status, visa, etc., they have the same expiry date. It's the 31st of December 2024. And that is not a mistake, and that is not the end date of their visa. That's just the end date of their BRP card, of this piece of plastic. Because starting 2025, the UK Home Office replaces those cards with electronic proof of status. So that is called an e-visa, and technically it's a record on gov.uk, which shows in real time online whether the person has the legal right to stay in the UK. It can be under the Ukraine scheme, it can be a work visa, it can be indefinite leave to remain, their permanent residence. Then it will show whether they do have the right to work, to rent, access public funds, so benefits, and most importantly, the end date of their visa or status. So plastic cards get replaced by electronic status. And why is that? There are lots and lots of reasons. First of all, it's security, because physical BRP cards, unfortunately, they get forged. There are lots of schemes where criminals would produce a fake BRP card, or one person would forge that and use the other person's BRP card, and that is not good, obviously, so the Home Office wants to put an end to it. But also there are lots of just convenience and efficiency reasons, like today, if you forget or lose your BRP card, especially abroad, that's a big hustle, because you need to physically go to the visa application center, pay a hefty sum of money, then wait a couple of weeks till you're issued the one-time permit to re-enter the UK. That is very much inconvenient, and there were some dramatic stories with people losing their BRPs abroad. So e-visa is impossible to lose. It's already there on gov.uk. From anywhere in the world, you can access it and you can re-enter the country. And all the considerations of sustainability, less plastic, no carbon footprint for delivering those things. So there are lots of practical reasons, but probably security and convenience would be the most important ones. So, but not everything goes smoothly here in this process. So as of early December, the stats were quite concerning, because out of 4 million people who needed to create an electronic visa, an e-visa, so convert their BRP card or other proof of status to electronic format, only 3 million people managed to do so. So there is roughly 1 million people who either don't know about it or had technical difficulties, which there were many, and they cannot create an e-visa. And government recognized this as a real issue. And quite recently, they just issued an update that until the end of March 2025, if someone is unable to board their flight to the UK because their e-visa either is not configured or there are technical issues, they can still show their expired BRP card and they will be allowed to board the flight and re-enter. Plus, inside the UK, it's like they can still use this expired BRP card to set up an e-visa, but for generating a proof of status, electronic proof of status for employers, landlords, other institutions, they need to configure an e-visa. So the concession is really for travel-related issues. And my advice to fellow Ukrainians is not to rely on it and really do everything they can to configure an e-visa so they don't get stuck abroad without being able to return to the UK. That's why it's so urgent. So if I were to compare how does the crossing of the UK border work today for Ukrainians on Ukraine scheme visas and what's going to change from 2025, actually, in the best case scenario, that's going to be much simpler. Because today, if you ever traveled with your Ukrainian guests together, you will see that their process of boarding is a bit more complicated than for British people, because they cannot check in online. They cannot get their boarding pass online. When they check in for their flight, they get like a preliminary check-in. And then at the airport, they need to physically go to the check-in counter, even if they don't have baggage to check in. And only there, if their BRP card is checked against their passport, that this is the same person, the airline staff will issue their boarding pass. And then one more time, at the gate, when the flight is boarding, they need to produce their BRP card again, together with their passport and boarding card. And only after this double check on the airline side, they are allowed to board. And then for the third time at the UK border, they again show their BRP and their passport. So if they forgot their BRP card, or even if they lost it at the airport, they technically cannot board the flight. There are some exceptions. There are Ukrainians with extremely good negotiation skills who were able to persuade the airline to let them board with the electronic proof of status in 2024, but these are more of the exceptions than the rule. The rule is that airline, till the end of this year, 2024, they will require a physical proof of status. That would be BRP, if this is not their first time entering the UK, or entry clearance letter if they're coming for the first time. Next year, it's going to be much, much easier. It's going to be practically almost the same as for British people, because Ukrainian who has the e-visa configured, they will have their passport, Ukrainian passport, linked to that e-visa, and they will be able to just enter the number of that passport. They will receive their boarding pass immediately in electronic format. And at the airport, they don't even need to visit the check-in counter. They just can go straight to the boarding gate and only show their passport when they're boarding. So it's much more convenient if things go well. If they don't have their e-visa configured, unfortunately, it's going to be much harder. And they will have to go online to gov.uk, very quickly log in and produce the share code that proves their immigration status. Then they will need to ask and persuade the airline staff to go online to go.uk and check that share code to really check that their immigration status is there and the visa is valid. And if the airline staff is unable to do so, there is one last measure. There is a special hotline from the UK Visa and Immigration for the airline staff. It's called Carrier Support Hub, and Ukrainian guests will need to persuade the airline staff to call that hotline so they can check their immigration status. So it's not 100% that they won't be allowed to board, but it's really good that they have an e-visa configured before they attempt to board the flight in 2025. And again, it's pretty much urgent, especially for Ukrainians who go abroad for Christmas. So they leave the UK this year, they come back in January. It's a good thing to configure e-visa before that. There are some myths, and I need to cover them because these are the common misconceptions that we get in our chats when Ukrainians come and ask about e-visas. So first one is people get confused and they think that e-visa is actually an extension of Ukrainian visas. That's not true because Evisa only converts the BRP card into electronic format. So their end date of their Ukraine scheme visa is going to stay the same. It just gets into electronic form. Then people who already have online account on gov.uk, those are the people who used mobile application to apply for the UK visa. They think, okay, I'm done, everything's okay. But the truth is that it's worth going there, logging in and checking that their e-visa is correct, because there were lots and lots of technical glitches. And the most important thing, they need to check that their current Ukrainian passport is linked to that e-visa, because all the border checks, all the airline checks will rely on a passport number, and that passport number has to be linked to their gov.uk account. Then some people rush to throw away that BRP card as soon as they create an e-visa. Don't do that. Because, first of all, this year the card is still needed to board the flight to the UK, and also it will be needed for future applications. And with regards to children, there is a lot of confusion because parents try to find a way to link children to their UKVI, to their e-visa. They cannot find a way to do so and they panic. But the reality is that for each person, even if it's a small child, there has to be a separate UKVI account and a separate e-visa configured. So there's no technical way to link parents' e-visa to child's e-visa. So just instruct your guests if they have this issue that for a child they need to create a separate e-visa. How do they check their immigration status? The easiest way is to go to gov.uk, just search for a page called Prove Immigration Status, and then this huge green button, Start Now, will ask them for either their BRP or passport. And then when they log in, they will see their immigration status, they will see their name, face, the name of their visa, and how long is it valid. And then there will be another green button, series of green buttons to get a share code. And that share code, if anyone asks them about their immigration status, they can give this share code, and that person or organization can go online and check that they indeed have a visa. There were some issues for the last few months where people went online and their status here was not Ukraine scheme, and it was wrong. There was anything else like live outside the rules, humanitarian protection, so all kinds of wrong statuses. UKVI, the Home Office, promised that they will fix that and no action is required. So again, please don't panic, it's gonna be okay. As long as the share code is being generated and the immigration status page is there, should be fine. Now, we are not gonna go through the whole process of e-visa setup. That is probably, if I remember correctly, 40 steps long process. But if you scan this QR code, you will get our guide, which is a step-by-step guide to setting up a e-visa and creating a UKVI account. So how to turn your physical BRP into electronic status. Everything is here, step-by-step in Ukrainian. Now, if there are any people who genuinely struggle with technology, disabled people, people with really poor language skills, anyone vulnerable can also absolutely for free go to any of the organizations authorized by the Home Office to help people with e-visas. So if you scan this QR code, there will be a list of organizations on the gov.uk, and your guests can use help from those organizations. They might have to wait because, as you heard, there is 1 million people as of early December who did not create e-visas. So the demand, as you see, could be quite high, but they will help. Just they will have to wait. Now, finally, one more time, once your guests have set up their e-visas, please remind them that they should not throw away their BRP card because they need it this year and they will need it next year for applying for UK visa extension. One more thing about extension. So for those who joined a bit later, I will repeat it one more time that setting up an e-visa does not count as an application for extension of Ukraine visa. The extension scheme that is called Ukraine Permission Extension Scheme, or UPE, it has not opened yet. It will open on February 4th, 2025. So all people who need to extend their stay in the UK on the Ukrainian visa will need to apply for this scheme. And this is what I'm going to talk about next. So Ukraine Permission Extension Scheme, what is that and how is it going to work? The most important fact is that Ukrainians will be able to extend their current Ukraine scheme visas for 18 months. That applies to all types of Ukraine scheme visas. So obviously sponsorship type, the one that your guests will probably have, but also Ukraine family scheme for people who came to their UK-based family members, and also Ukraine extension scheme. So for example, if any of your guests had a child born in the UK, that child will likely have a Ukraine extension scheme type of visa, but they will also be able to extend that for 18 months. For each person, these 18 months will be different. They will count from the end date of their current visa, which is different for different people because different people applied and arrived at different times. The most important fact is that it's not an automatic extension. They will have to make an application and wait for a decision. And the earliest they can make this application is on February 2025, on 4th of February. But, and it's very important, that they should not apply too early and they should not apply too late. They should make this application within the last 28 days of their current Ukraine scheme visa. And I'm going to explain how to check when exactly does their visa end. But if they make their application too early, this application will be rejected as invalid. So in simple words, the UK Visa and Immigration Service will treat them as if they never applied for extension. If they apply too late, so after their current visa expires, they will lose access to benefits. They will technically be an overstayer, so they will be here illegally. So that's very important to apply within the right time frame. I advise all the Ukrainians to open their calendars on their phone and just put a reminder in their calendar 28 days before their current visa expires to apply for UPE. Another very important fact is that they must be physically present in the UK in order to apply for Ukraine Permission Extension visa. And what's even more important, after they applied, they should not leave the UK until they get the extension decision. If they leave the UK, so they applied and they decide to go abroad for holiday, that cancels their application automatically. The airlines, they report all the passengers who board flights, and the UKVI will know that they left the UK and the application is going to be cancelled. And in many cases, they will not be able to return. So that's very important that they apply and they stay here. So another piece of advice, like practical advice, do not plan anything, any business travel, any vacations around that time. And the processing time, according to the Home Office, is going to be up to 8 weeks. But just looking at the stats, there were so many people who got their visas in March, April, and May 2022, and all of those people will apply for extension practically at the same time. Those who have visas ending in March through to May 2025 should expect delays. I personally don't think it's going to be 8 weeks, just to set the right expectations. It may as well be, they may get lucky, but it can get delayed. That's why just be careful with the travel plans. That's my message to the Ukrainian guests. Now, many people will look at these numbers and get quite scared because, yes, Ukrainians can only apply within the last 28 days of their current Ukraine scheme visa, but the processing time is 8 weeks. So people get scared and ask me, am I going to be an overstayer? And the answer is no, because there is a rule in the immigration law, in the UK immigration law, that a person who applied for extension of their visa in time, they stay here legally, even when their visa expires. Through the whole duration of that processing time, they will be here legally. So that's going to be all right. If they applied in time, then their status is still legal while the application is being processed. More details are already on gov.uk. It's a pretty long page with lots and lots of rules. But probably the most important ones is like, how do you apply for the extension? So a few things. First of all, the person is expected to prove their identity and nationality. In simple words, that means that they will need to log in to that online account on gov.uk, which they created when they set up their e-visa. And they will need to prove that their identity is still the same. So probably they will use an ID check mobile application. They will confirm that they are currently in the UK at the time of applying, and which type of Ukraine scheme visa do they hold. And then they will have to provide their address, so either their sponsor's address if they still live with a sponsor, or address of their rental accommodation, basically any place they stay physically most of the time. And number 5 is quite important, and there will be a piece of practical advice that follows. They will have to include all their trips outside of the UK for the whole duration of their Ukraine scheme visa. That is a very standard rule for UK visa applications. So I remember filling in that long and horrendous form when I applied for my work visa extension. And because my work is, it's like there's a lot of business travel, I had to keep my records in Excel tables so I don't forget when do I leave the UK and when do I return. That was the advice from my immigration lawyer at the time, and this is what I tell all the Ukrainians. If you go abroad, please keep records, keep your boarding passes, take photos of your stamps, entry and exit stamps. So if anyone from the UK visas and immigration asks you for proof of time spent outside the UK, you can have that proof. So that's quite shocking for many people who don't know the local immigration system. There are some rules for spouses of Ukrainians. So there were cases where, let's say, the husband is a Ukrainian, but his wife is of another nationality, and they came to the UK on Homes for Ukraine. So there will be a rule that the non-Ukrainian family member will still have to prove that their family relationship continues, that they still live with their partner at the same address, and only then they will be able to extend their visa. And for children, for people under 18, they will have to prove that they are here with the responsible adult. In most cases, that will be their mom or their dad or both. But again, there are some cases when parents had to leave the UK and they left their children, usually teenagers, here, either with friends or with sponsors. Now, those children will need to have legal document that proves that there is a responsible adult in the UK taking care of them. So if any of your guests are in this situation, tell them that they need to organize that proof, like write a letter, get it translated to English, notarized, so their kid is not going to be in trouble when they need to extend the visa. Right, so that was the UPE, Ukraine Permission Extension. Overall, the message is this. Most of your guests will be able to extend their visas, no problem. And the application form, compared to other visa applications form in the UK, is going to be rather simple. So no need to worry, just prepare and apply on time and get your records of travel ready, and that's going to be okay. So that's, I hope, a piece of good news. Now, important part for sponsors, for hosts, and that is thank you payments. So alongside the details of Ukraine Permission Extension Scheme, the government also announced additional information about payments. So good news is that if your guest extends their visa under the Ukraine Permission Extension Scheme, and they still live with you as their sponsor, you will keep getting thank you payments for those 18 months of extension. So many people feared that thank you payments are going to get cancelled without any warning. That's not what happened, which is great. However, the government announced that from the 1st of April, the payment will be a flat rate of 350 a month. That is per residential address, so that does not depend on the number of guests. And it will be for all sponsors, including those who currently get the higher payment of 500 a month. That's, a budgetary consideration, but I mean, we are not in a position to comment. That's just a fact. So what they say is that in April, you will still get your payment under the old rate. So if that's 500 a month, you will get that. But the next payments will be at 350 a month. However, at this point, I will advise you to check with your local council, because some councils, and that is only their local decision, but some decided to top up that payment. So in some areas, if that is a council's decision, sponsors will get higher payment. So basically the council from the local budget is going to add more money to this 350, but the government only funds 350. And another important update is for people like me who sponsored their close relatives, like I'm a sponsor for my sister. So people like me will get no payments at all when their guests transition to Ukraine permission extension scheme. So, and many Ukrainians who sponsored their relatives, they already do not get any payments because for all the new applications, thank you payments for relatives were stopped as of that was October 2024. So basically, the consideration is that you have to take care of your relatives on your own. Right. And another piece of advice in bold, and this is something that we've been telling our Ukrainian community for a very, very long time, probably from the first weeks of their arrival, that please do plan for your move to rented accommodation, because sponsorship arrangement is a huge act of kindness, but you cannot count on kindness forever. So that's why we write so many detailed guides and very elaborate advice on how to move to rental accommodation, how to find your own place to live, so you can be sure that you do have a rented contract, rented accommodation for a certain period of time, and you know that you can live there. There is also a scheme, I think we posted that on a Facebook group for sponsors. There is a scheme that allows to rent a room as a lodger, and that can be like a guest who rents a room from their sponsor. So if you're in a very good relationship with your guest and you would like them to stay, for some people it will be economically better to stop the relationship of a sponsor and guest and just sign a lodger agreement. They can rent a room, and up to 7,000 something pounds a year you can rent without paying taxes on this. So if you are interested in that, just go on our Facebook group. There will be more details, the link to gov.uk, and maybe it's worth discussing that with your guest. If this drop to 350 a month in thank you payments makes it hard for you to keep hosting. Right. That's it about thank you payments. Housing guide is very, very elaborate. We keep updating it, and if you'd like to help your guests find a rental accommodation, just direct them to this link. We explained everything in detail, from where to search for rent, to how to do it safely, to how to get housing help through universal credit. So everything they need to know about finding their rent will be here. And now the last part of our presentation today is maybe something that is the hardest. People who came here, many of them, they have nowhere to return, and they probably built their lives here in the UK, and for some of them it would be impractical to just get uprooted and go back when their visa ends. So inevitably they ask, what's next? How can they stay here? And here I don't have good news. Unfortunately, I will just have to talk about the reality. And the reality is that the UK government has been telling all the time since the visa scheme started, Ukrainian schemes, that this is a temporary visa. I was able to find multiple questions in the parliament from MPs asking over and over if Ukrainians are going to be allowed to stay, and the answer was always consistently no. We keep schemes under the consideration, but it's a temporary arrangement, and Ukrainian government wants Ukrainians to come back to their home country to rebuild it after the war ends. Now, there was a little bit of hope that maybe Ukrainians would be able to qualify for settlement, so for being able to stay here indefinitely under a so-called 10-year long residence route. So 10-year route is when someone lives in the UK legally without interruption for 10 years on different visas. Like they came here as a student, they switched to graduate visa, they switched to, let's say, family visa, and it's been 10 years since they started their journey that they can apply for indefinite leave to remain. And many people hoped that, oh, maybe they can switch from Ukraine scheme visa to another type of visa and start this journey and accumulate 10 years and then apply for the right to stay here forever. But again, together with the recent announcement, the UK government said, no, the Ukraine scheme time does not count towards this period. So that created like a wave of negative emotions, I would say. A lot of people got upset and they started looking for other ways. So what are those other ways? I'm going to give you a very brief overview. So if your guest is upset about it or they don't know what to do, you can just point them to those resources and tell them that there are ways to stay here, but they are not really easy. So very quickly, there are a few ways they can stay. One is a skilled worker visa. I'm going to tell a little bit more about that, also because that was how I came here and how I was able to eventually stay here and get my indefinite leave to remain. So from personal experience, I'm going to tell you a few words about that. There is another route, like if they meet someone here who has a settled status or who is a British national, and if they decide to live together, they may qualify for a spouse or partner visa. So that's another route. They can become students. Also pretty viable route for young people, for teenagers, for people who just think about entering the university. And there is also a special type of work visa, which is called health and care worker visa. This kind of visa has a little bit more loyal list of requirements, because we all know that healthcare, hospitals, care homes, they need a lot of staff today, and that's why government decided to make things a bit easier for employers who want to hire this type of staff. So, as I promised, skilled worker visa. So that is, as the name says, a visa for qualified, highly qualified professionals. The list of those professions that are eligible for skilled worker visa is on gov.uk. It changes all the time, so it can change like twice a year. And there are lots of different professions. It can be, obviously IT specialists, medical specialists, but also like qualified builders, anyone actually who is a qualified worker should look at that list, because their profession can be there. But probably the most important requirement is that the person applying for this visa must have a job offer from a specific employer who is ready to offer them a job, and that has a license from the Home Office to employ overseas workers. It's called a sponsor license. And this license is not like super hard to get, but it's quite costly. And just from looking at the whole process that I observed as an employee, it's a lot of bureaucratic burden on the company. So that's why not every company would be glad to apply for this license. It's not just the cost, it's a lot of just paperwork. Now, other requirements, there are salary requirements. So the salary has to meet a minimum threshold of £38,700 gross per year. It can be higher as well if for a particular profession the average salary is higher, then there will be a so-called going rate for that profession and the requirement will be higher. But for people who want to work as health and care worker or for teachers, there is a special type of skilled worker visa called educational worker. Those salary requirements are lower. So here comes another bit of advice that if your guests are really determined to stay and they have like a qualification of a teacher, it makes sense for them to check those requirements. They may qualify and they may start looking for a job as a teacher to get this visa, to switch to this visa. With health and care worker, same situation. Lots of healthcare institutions hire staff and, the requirements are quite low. They would hire anyone who's willing to work hard and be kind to patients. But the problem with health and care worker that unfortunately it does not allow the applicant to add their family members as dependents. So basically family with children will have no way to add children to this application. That's why probably it's more of a route for people who don't have kids. But are really, really, really determined to stay here. They will also need to pass the English exam. It's not super hard, it's like B1 level. So if your guests have been here and they can communicate with you more or less, they will probably be able to pass this exam. It's not an option for people who are self-employed, because you need to be employed as an employee on a payroll of an actual organization that has a license, so self-employed cannot get that. And if their profession is not on the list or they cannot find an employer who will hire them this way, then unfortunately this route is not for them. But again, it's a pretty viable route, and the extension of 18 months under the Ukraine permission extension gives your guests the most important thing, which is time to think about this route, to maybe change their qualification or focus their job search on this kind of route. Right, there are more visas, as I said before. There is spouse or partner, student visa. There are some rules for health and care worker visa that are worth knowing. If your guest is interested, we have a collection of guides on our website where all of those visas are described. Again, we collected everything that's on gov.uk, translated it to Ukrainian, and we tried to explain it in simple language as much as possible. So please direct them here, and they will get all the necessary information. Right, at this point, I will pass the floor to you, Stan, for this topic.
Hello again. Thank you very much. That was great. Just before I start talking about this, I know you may have received some questions on this topic. I do want to apologize. The chat isn't available for everyone. We realized it's a side effect of us using Eventbrite as the registration platform. Teams obviously doesn't quite like that because they like to manage everything in-house. So everyone who joined through the Eventbrite link is for Teams considered external. Therefore, if you could use the Q&A part, which should be accessible to everyone here, if you could use the Q&A pretty much as a chat as much as possible, that'd be great. I see that some people have already started posting some questions. We will try to answer them either in the chat or at the end if we can. Some questions might border a little bit more on the legal advice side of things, which we won't do. We don't have the qualification for that officially. And so we might just say that this is a case that would be best taken to a lawyer, but we'll try to answer what we can. So yes, if you have any questions, please do post them in the Q&A section, not the chat section. Apologies for that. So yes, carrying on from that, there are other routes outside of the ones that Galina just presented. One of them is the asylum, refugee, and humanitarian protection route. We would not endorse this route because it is quite intense and convoluted, and it will not be applicable to the vast majority of people. People will need to prove that they are being personally persecuted in their home country and by their home country. It's a long process. The outcome is not guaranteed. We understand that there are, online social media sources that might say that this is a viable option for people who might struggle otherwise via the skilled worker route or any others. It is not an easy route. It does take a lot of time and effort, and most people will not be eligible for this. That includes people on the Ukraine schemes, and those who can't prove that that they are being persecuted in Ukraine. And conscription, I know conscription is a hot topic and is controversial. Conscription in and of itself by the home country is not considered persecution. So it's just a caveat. It is possible to claim asylum, but it's a long and convoluted route. If any Ukrainians bring it up, if your guests bring it up, this is one of the situations in which legal advice is the best route. And I would say first look at all the information that is available for free. Don't pay for legal advice just to find out that you're not eligible for this. But yeah, do due diligence and research, and we don't endorse this route because it's not a viable route for the vast majority of people that are on the Ukraine schemes or would be eligible for the Ukraine schemes. Yep.
Yep. Thank you, Stan. I think that's yours as well.
Yeah, I think I should be able to take most of the rest of these up until the Q&A. I think there's only a couple. So what can you do in terms of supporting your guest's Evisa application? You can. It's not necessarily a convoluted process, but people may be kind of confused by the steps. The language barrier might be an issue. So try to sit down with your guest, provide step-by-step assistance during the Evisa application. You don't need to have any sort of legal qualifications. It does not constitute legal advice to help someone through this. The best thing to do is the practical side of things. Ensure they have the necessary technology. If they don't already have it, you can let them use your laptop if it's easier than on a phone on a larger format. These sort of things just to kind of lower the barrier to entry a little bit. Also, double checking all the information for accuracy, just so that there aren't any hiccups later on. It's always better to have two sets of eyes or more than one, and then also to confirm that they understand all the timelines, they understand what it actually means. Once again, Evisa is not an application for the extension. It might seem like we are kind of harping on about this, but people don't always understand because the processes were announced for people quite close together, so people might get confused about the various portals they need to access and find their way through. There you go. And then you can also, when it comes time for it, once again, the UPE, the Ukraine Permission Extension Scheme applications will open on February the 4th at 9 a.m. That's 2025, obviously, so in about 3 months. Similar sort of thing in terms of helping people through the UPE. The practical side of things is always the best. Make sure that you're, as much as possible, lowering the barrier to entry on the practical side of things. Once again, language might be a barrier, so you can also assist your guest with the UPE application process. It's also not legal advice unless it is a legal question specifically, but the process itself and helping someone through it is something anyone can do. Help them gather and prepare all the required documents, including proof of address. The process has been announced, but what hasn't been announced is the nitty-gritty specifics of what people might need in terms of proving that they've been in the UK for the sufficient amount of time. Well, since the beginning, really, and that, in what ways they should be proving their stay and also where they've stayed. So as much as possible, help them gather utility bills, bank statements that might help, any official letters, help once again on the practical side, scan, upload these documents if possible. Make sure that people know the timelines, ensure that the application is processed within the expected time frame. So that's no sooner than 20 days before people's visas expire. And obviously not the date after the visas expire. Galina has talked about this, but it does bear repeating. If the application for the UPE is put in after their current visas expire, they will lose access to benefits. They will no longer be entitled to live and work in the UK as they have under the Homes for Ukraine scheme and the other schemes. There will be a break in their entitlement. It will cause issues. So make sure to highlight the importance to your guest and make sure that they do understand the timelines and help them to hit those deadlines as well. We do have a webinar planned or in the process of being planned with the Home Office and MHCLG, which is the Ministry of Housing, Communities and Local Government, formerly DLUC, formerly MHCLG, and then renamed back to the original name. We will have representatives from those organizations to help people out. It should be sometime in January. We're planning it with them. We will let people know when that is available, and hopefully that will answer some kind of further, more in-depth questions from the official side of things as well. Thank you. So you can also help your guests with housing arrangements. Obviously, if it's still a current sponsorship, discuss the duration of the hosting. Make sure you clearly communicate any sort of plans. Once again, timelines. If you intend to end sponsorship arrangements, if you intend to change the nature of the sponsorship arrangement, anything like that. Transparency is key. Make sure that your guest knows where they stand. Make sure they know that they'll have security of the sponsorship going forward, and if not, communicate that fact to them. As was mentioned previously as well, there are options for creating a lodging agreement instead, if it's no longer viable for you to just have someone staying in your home for free, and if your guest is able to pay and contribute a little bit more, you can discuss a lodging agreement. Obviously, do it as sensitively as possible. You know best what the relationship is, what the people's capacities are, what your capacities are. Try to introduce it as sensitively as possible if it is a viable solution. If it isn't a viable solution, you can also help your guests to transition into the private rental sector. As we know, the private rental sector in the UK isn't the easiest thing to navigate at the best of times. If even if you are from here, if you know English very well, if you know all the things that you need to have prepared, all the things you need to have thought about. So help people research the available housing options locally or elsewhere, the relevant websites like Rightmove, for example, help guests navigate with that, assist with budgeting for rent and bills so that they understand what is included. Sometimes bills are included in the rent, sometimes they're not. It's not always clear. Helping with those things would be great. Making sure, once again, people know what they should have prepared in terms of documentation, that are the type of stuff that is typically requested and required by landlords, proof of income, references, credit checks, etc. And for any further support, connect them with local housing support services or charities that can provide any sort of location-specific advice or assistance, or anything in depth, more so than perhaps you are comfortable supplying yourself. If you yourself aren't entirely comfortable navigating this process, once again, you know best what your capacity is. If it's something that is a little, a step too far, if you're not comfortable yourself, there are other services, there are other places where guests can find recourse. One of them is our support channels as well. Galina has, and we have linked to our housing guides and our blogs on housing as well. People will be able to find all the information that they need to guide them through the process in Ukrainian on our website, on both the guides and the blogs. And additional stuff as well. As we keep saying, we have quite a lot of information on our website. We also have our information channels and our support channels. We have our general channel that the bulk of people are in. I think I said 22,500 people, but we've also got smaller thematic channels. One of them is on housing, but we've got others on visas as well. And employment and mental health. So we have a wealth of information on all the very relevant topics for people to find. It was a little bit too quick for me there. Language support. If language is a barrier, which it will be for many people, you can help arrange translation services if necessary. And if you yourself, once again, aren't comfortable guiding people through these processes, there are other services and there are other places to find support for this. Legal aid. Going back to the asylum kind of note, or the note that I had on the asylum claims and that side of things. There are places that might be offering kind of unnecessary, perhaps, support for money, where there is a just as good equivalent option where people can get support for legal type questions without having to pay. A lot of stuff is navigable for free, but if there are complex legal questions, recommend contacting legal aid or solicitors experienced with immigration or housing matters. If it is a complex question that requires legal help, obviously, find that recourse and help them find that recourse. There are also going to be community resources for specific questions in a local setting, or if people want to go in person somewhere, it's always best to go local. So there will be community organizations. They can go to the council for support, for housing support, financial advice, integration assistance from various charities and organizations in the local area. And of course, this is a very stressful process. It has been a stressful process. It's a stressful circumstance. There are also, areas of recourse for emotional support. All of these kind of bureaucratic processes on top of the, the day-to-day stress of the circumstance of what's happening. It can take a toll. So there are places people can turn. We have a mental health channel ourselves, but if people are more comfortable online, but there will be other areas, other places people can turn. If you yourself can provide, reassurance, patience, any sort of emotional support, depending on the relationship that you have with your guests, that's excellent. Once again, you know your capacity for it. You know whether you're capable of providing the support. Thank you if you do, obviously. But if it's not necessarily just on you to do so. Yeah. Thank you. Yeah, so now we'll try to go into the Q&A and answer as many questions that have been asked and that remain unanswered. I'll bring Galina back on screen. Should we scroll down and see? I think there were. Now it's going to be the little awkward process of actually reading the questions. Unfortunately, we can't really bring anyone on screen to ask them themselves. So it would have been easier. It'd be something we can explore in the future. But yeah, there are questions. I'll read some out. Actually, might be a common question. There was a question around, around applying for the e-visa, not for the UPE, but for the e-visa outside of the country. It's fine to apply for the e-visa outside of the country. There's no stipulation that you can't. For the UPE, obviously, you need to be in the country. For the e-visa, you can be elsewhere. Yeah. Then there's a question around recourse if an application is taking a long time. Just to stipulate, the Homes for Ukraine scheme and is still open. Application visas are still being processed. There might be a specific reason why it's taking a long time, but it can also, have hit some bureaucratic snag. So there are ways you can find out. Galina, I know you've done it. So do you want to say something more about that?
Just to clarify, that is related to the new Homes for Ukraine applications for people who just want to come here for the first time, right?
Yeah.
Yep. Okay, so those applications, they normally take 2 to 6 weeks. The majority of them get approved within 2 to 6 weeks. My sister's application took about 3 weeks, if I remember correctly. That was last year. Now, currently, they may take a bit longer for 3 reasons that just happen to come at the same time, just coincide. The first one is that the Home Office is introducing e-visas, so many of the staff are busy with that. So that decreases their capacity. Secondly, we publish that on our channels, but another change that Home Office decided to make is to change their visa application center partner. So the process started in September of this year and is expected to finish by mid-January or February 25. But in many countries, including Ukraine, the company that operates visa application centers has changed. So that means that for a few weeks, the applications, like the documentation, the evidence that people supplied could have been just up in the air. Now they started like slowly recovering their service, but there has been a fair bit of a delay. And And the third thing is probably the Christmas period. That always takes longer when you apply for a visa, because lots of people around the world want to come to the UK for Christmas, and that's why all of those applications just are in the same bucket. So if it takes a bit longer, don't worry. What can you do in that case? If your guest's application has been there in processing for more than 2 months, or even like 2.5, 3 months, so that is considered a bit long, especially if you provided all the answers to your council, you had your house checked, so the accommodation is approved, you had your DBS check done, so the police check. If everything has been done, but the application is still not decided, you can escalate. So you can call the hotline, Homes for Ukraine hotline, and say that I want to escalate an application. You will need an application number. It starts with GWF, so the application number of your guest. You will need to know the email they applied with, so the email they used to register for their application. And yeah, they will accept your escalation. Quite often, the application gets decided within a week or 2 after that escalation. If that doesn't work, then you have your last resort, which is your MP. You can write to your MP, give as many details as you can. So again, the application number is very useful. Your guest's correct name in English. If you can include any details about them, let's say if they are in the zone that is suffering the most from shelling. Well, the whole Ukraine is not safe, but there are extremely unsafe zones at the moment, regions in Ukraine. So if you can also make an emphasis that they are in a very unsafe situation, and your MP can escalate to the Home Office, that can also help progress the application. So that would be the advice.
Okay, great, lovely. Thank you very much. Yeah, I've been looking through some of the other questions. I saw one that I wanted to answer. Give me a second. Yeah, there was a question around having to leave the country within the 8 weeks, or within the whatever the period is when people are waiting for the decision. The general advice is do not leave the country. There is no way of the Home Office knowing what the circumstances, nor that will the system specifically. I mean, the people might care, but the system that this is done through doesn't really care nor know what's going on. If it's recorded that a person has left the country, it will be flagged and it will put the application in danger. So regardless of the circumstance, don't leave the country until you have the decision after, especially if it is within the frame after the visa has expired and before a decision is made. Especially then, don't leave the country. Then this one was answered. Yes. In terms of travel outside of UK or Ukraine, as was on one of our slides, what the Home Office will be concerned with is stays outside of UK and Ukraine primarily. So that's the thing that people are that the Home Office is concerned with. So that means any length of time that the person has spent outside of the UK and Ukraine. They're not putting any particular emphasis on people going back to Ukraine for extended periods of time. Once again, we know the process, we don't know the specifics. They've said that they won't be looking negatively upon people, leaving the UK, going back to Ukraine, then coming back. It's all the times that are not those situations that they may have spent in any other third country. Those are the ones that will be a case-by-case basis in terms of how, if and how it will impact the person's application for the UPE. Let's see. Yeah, so Evisa can be obtained from a third country. We've answered that. There's a question here. My guest went abroad alone twice for a few days in the last 18 months, leaving her 11-year-old daughter with us. Will she have to provide evidence that we were competent adults looking after her when she applies for her visa extension? It's quite a complicated one. There's nothing in the process. Galina, you're shaking your head. There's nothing in the process that specifically stipulates one way or the other in terms of this. There's obviously other stipulations in terms of safeguarding that, if a child is being left with, out without legal guardians, that there should be a kind of a safeguarded process in place for that. That if it's for a longer period of time with unrelated people, they need to be legal guardians. But that's outside of the stipulations for the Ukraine Permission Extension Scheme specifically. That's more about the specifics of the stay in the country and all that we just spoke about. Do you want anything to add to that, Galina?
Yeah, I'll briefly add that that rule is for the situation that exists at the moment of child applying for the UPE. So if it happened in the past, I can't see anything in the documentation that would say that it will impact the application. So just at the moment when that child is applying for an extension, there has to be a responsible adult for them, either their parents or anyone, their close relative, or if they are left with you as a sponsor, then you will need to provide the documentation that you're allowed to care of them legally. But that's at the moment of application, not back in time. Cool. So don't worry.
Right, another question. Our guests live in another house nearby, which we own, all going very well. We do not want to become their landlords. Can we use the lodger scheme to allow them to continue living in the house? I think there's a clarification that's needed there. The lodging agreement is a housing agreement. It's not a visa agreement. I think that's sort of perhaps where the question is going. It is purely a housing agreement. You don't need to become their landlords for them to continue staying there. It'll have no bearing on the application process for UPE. It's great if everything is going well. You don't want to charge them. You don't need to charge them. It'll have no bearing on that. You can continue as you are. You don't need to have a separate lodging agreement for anything to do with UPE or e-visas or anything like that. Okay. Right. So another question. Government have really let down the hosts, especially those hosts who have the same guest over a number of years. Will there be any issue if I, as a host, decline thank you payment and begin renting a room to be paid by government via universal credit? Financially would allow me to host for even longer. Well, I mean, whoever it is, I think that there's a couple things there. Yes, people will be unhappy about the level of thank you payments and support available to hosts. Unfortunately, it is as it is. I'm not quite sure what the implication is in the question, because it would be the guest that would be applying for universal credit, and that would be a separate process that depends on if they are eligible for universal credit in their current circumstance. You're perfectly within your rights to decline a thank you payment. The interconnection between the thank you payment, which goes to you, and then the universal credit, which goes to your guest, I'm guessing that interconnection isn't quite clear as such. There's no direct link between those two because they will be going to two different people.
Well, Stan, I think I understand the question, and that is exactly what the lodging scheme is for. So you can end your sponsorship if you see that 350, that is non-taxable payment, plus your discount for, that your guest is disregarded for council tax. If that is not viable, yes, you can stop the sponsorship and you can rent a room in your home to the same guest, basically the same room they are staying in. At this point, you can charge like a reasonable payment for that room. So probably best to check the local rates, what other people are paying if they stay as lodgers. Yes, if this guest has a universal credit, they can apply for a housing element, and they will basically get their costs covered, either partially or in full. If you need to know like what exactly would be the calculation, there are benefit calculators online, so you can just imagine that you already have this lodger agreement and go together with your guest and fill in the form in the calculator as if they already rent from you, put the amount they are going to pay, and you will see how much is going to get covered by their housing element of universal credit. As I mentioned earlier, on gov.uk you will find what is the amount that is not taxable. It was a little bit over £7,000 a year that is not taxable if you take a lodger, so that's good. And the only probably other important consideration is that you're gonna have to pay council tax for them, because they will no longer be disregarded once they exit the sponsorship scheme. But really chat with your local council, chat with your guests, use calculators. For many of you, especially if you host like more than one person, and obviously your cost might be much higher, but it's flat rate no matter how many people you host. And if you still live in the same house with them, the lodger agreement can be a good solution. So,
Great.
yeah.
Thank you. Much more comprehensive than my answer. Thank you very much. Right. Hopefully that was what you were asking. Okay, we've got another question here. Will a guest returning to Ukraine for Christmas and New Year need an e-visa when they return in January 25? Best to set it up, yes. BRPs will still be, you can still be able to use your BRP at that point in time, but if they are able to set up the e-visa, definitely set up the e-visa. That's kind of standard advice from us. Will this webinar be shared online? Yeah, we'll share it with as wide as we can. Feel free to share it on your part if you feel it will be helpful in any sort of local groups or anywhere else. What if the family changes their home address during the 8 weeks wait, or however long it takes for the decision for UPE to be made? Do you think Home Office might be sending any letters by post? How to change the address, and if it is needed? I think the entire point of the new processes, e-visa and UPE included, they're online. They're meant to be online, so the communication, the important communication, will come online. That's I don't believe it's necessary to even input current address as such, in terms of beyond, as in like in terms of confirming accommodation when applying, not necessarily in terms of correspondence address, I meant. What is the maximum time allowed outside the UK in a year? How will it affect the application? This is one of the important questions that we've passed on to the Home Office as well. We are doing our best to engage with them on these sort of questions. As I've said a couple of times, we know the process, we know the framing for it. We don't know the specifics of the decision-making process within the UPE application process as such. It hasn't been stipulated what is a maximum time allowed outside of the UK, and let's say outside of the UK, meaning in Ukraine. Once again, if it is a third country outside of UK and Ukraine, that'll be a case-by-case basis in terms of how it affects the application. But let's say this question is asking outside of the UK in Ukraine. It'll be up to the Home Office when they're publishing the specifics of the requirement, the eligibility requirements, to stipulate. In conversation, they've said that they are not looking to kind of basically dock points, negatively look at people's stay outside of the UK if the assumption is that their residence as such, their intended residence, was the UK, but it might be that if it's a very extended period of time, it might be a case-by-case basis, and it might take a little bit longer to reach a decision at the end. But these are the sort of things that we're trying to push the Home Office to clarify for our sake as well as everyone else's. Okay, due to issues joining the webinar, I missed the first half hour. Will there be recording? There will be a recording. Apologies for that. I know some people had issues joining. I myself did also have issues joining. I think that's more my laptop than anything else, but I tried to join on my phone and it wasn't playing nicely. So apologies if it didn't work out. It will be posted online. I think this is coming back to an answer we had in terms of going back to Ukraine to support ailing parents. It seems inhumane if your parent dies, you can't return to Ukraine for the funeral or to support the other very ill, elderly and frail parent. I would be inclined to agree with that. Unfortunately, it's not it's the standard process that everyone faces in these visa situations. It's not just for Ukrainians. This is how the immigration system is set up. And unfortunately, these are the implications and the consequences of how it is set up for everyone, not just Ukrainians. I would agree. It would be nice if people could go back and care for the people that they need to care for, that there would be more allowances for these sort of things. Unfortunately, that's just how the system works. Another question, the 12-year-old in our guest family does not have a passport. How will an e-visa be linked? Galina, do you want to answer that?
Yes, so in that case, when they go online to set up an e-visa, it will give them two options. One is using their BRP and the other using their passport. So for that child, they need to use the child's BRP, and that would be it. Unfortunately, this child will still need a passport to re-enter the UK. So the advice would be for them to go online and go to Ukraine embassy in the UK. There are two addresses. One is in London and the other is in Edinburgh, and sign up and get a new passport for that child. It got much easier recently. Previously, there were horrendous queues. It was impossible to get a slot. Now it got better, much better. So please encourage them to go and get a passport, but they can create an online account and set up an e-visa using the BRP for that child. At least that will mean that this child will have a share code of their immigration status if they need to prove that the child is legally here for any institution. They will be able to do so. So that's what they can do.
Great, thank you. Right, we've got two more questions. I think the last question is also the first question. I think we accidentally skipped over that one, so we'll try to come back to that one. Well, the next question is, do we have to state the time when we were outside the UK since we first arrived here or since the previous visa extension? Galina, do you have a thought on this?
Yeah. All the time on the Ukraine scheme visa, right? So that's a typical rule for all the applications, as I mentioned. And that means, like, if you started your journey on Ukraine scheme, then all your absences since you first arrived under the Ukraine scheme visa will have to be on the application. But if you've been here before, let's say you were a student and the war caught you here and you converted to the Ukraine scheme visa while being in the UK, you won't need to report your time outside when you were a student. So
great. Yeah, what the Home Office is concerned with is the stay in the UK on the Ukraine scheme visas, not any other stays. Yeah. And this is the one that was the first question. If a person is on the Ukrainian visa and requested humanitarian protection and the humanitarian protection application is being processed, Will there be any problems in the situation with applying for Ukrainian permission extension in the case when his Ukrainian status is currently being processed as humanitarian protection? Do you, Galina, do you have an understanding of the question?
Yeah, I do have an understanding of the question. I'm gonna answer as a volunteer, but not as a legal professional. What I know is that there cannot be technically two active applications in process, right? So if you apply for one visa or status, and then you make another application, either for the same visa or status or for a different, your next application automatically cancels the previous one, and it kind of takes its place. And I don't think it's going to be different for asylum and humanitarian protection, just technically. I'm not a lawyer. I'm just talking about the technical detail. So I would assume that if they have an asylum application in process and they apply for Ukraine permission extension, their asylum application will be cancelled. And the Home Office is going to consider their Ukraine permission extension application as the last one. And also there will be sort of a consideration that if you apply to extend your Ukraine scheme visa, then you no longer need asylum. So, but that's just my assumption. Better check with the lawyers technically that it is like that.
Lovely. Thank you very much. I think that's all the questions that we have. Apologies if we've missed anything. We may have missed some questions just because we can't answer those questions as such. But yeah, hopefully you've found this useful. The final slide was you know, to say if you found this helpful, but I don't think you can click on that link, unfortunately. I don't think it's active, so I have posted it in the Q&A. As I said, we are quite a small new charity, and any sort of donation is very much appreciated. Obviously, everything will remain free. We are a charity for these purposes, so we're happy to help, even if under any circumstances, really. There's no if. Thank you very much, and I hope you have a good rest of the weekend and a good holiday period.
Thank you very much.